Shattered reflections, the champagne flute trembled slightly in Olivia Reed's hand as she surveyed the crowded ballroom of the Architectural Excellence Awards. Crystal chandeliers cast honeyed light across the sea of black ties and evening gowns, illuminating faces she hadn't seen since her divorce 18 months ago. Her emerald dress purchase during a moment of bold defiance suddenly felt too conspicuous against the muted palette favored by the conservative design elite. "You designed the Thornfield restoration, didn't you?" A woman with silver-streaked hair approached, extending her hand. "Jacqueline Porter. I've followed your work since that brilliant community center in Portland." Livia smiled, grateful for the distraction from her thoughts. Thornfield was a labor of love, combining historical preservation with sustainable elements while honoring the original architect's vision. "It's what got you nominated tonight," Jacqueline said, gesturing toward the stage where 5 crystal awards gleamed. "But between us, you should have been nominated for lead architect, not just restoration specialist." The familiar sting of being overlooked resurfaced, but Olivia had grown accustomed to managing it. After her divorce from Marcus Whitley, the darling of modern commercial architecture, she'd been quietly shunted to restoration projects. Prestigious ones, certainly, but never the innovative new builds that had once been her passion. "Olivia Reed, I thought that was you." The voice behind her sent an electric current down her spine. She turned slowly, composing her features into professional neutrality before facing Marcus. His tailored tuxedo accentuated his tall frame. His trademark confidence remained, though new lines had formed around his eyes. "Marcus, congratulations on the Skyline Tower nomination." She kept her voice steady, determined not to reveal how she'd spent weeks avoiding all media coverage of his latest project. "Nomination," he laughed, the sound as smooth and practiced as ever. "I'm taking home the award live. The committee practically confirmed it during the pre-dinner drinks." A statuesque blonde appeared at his side, her hand possessively curling around his arm. "Darling, they're about to announce the first category. Sophia, meet Olivia Reed, my former wife," and he paused, his smile never reaching his eyes. ... A talented restorer of other architects' visions. The deliberate diminishment of her work hung in the air.
"Oh."
Sophia's gaze swept over Olivia with thinly veiled assessment. "How fascinating, Sophia. Said Marcus mentioned you preferred simpler projects these days." Jacqueline Porter, still standing beside Olivia, straightened. "Ms. Reed's Thornfield restoration has been featured in Architectural Digest twice this year. Her integration of historical elements with modern sustainability has redefined preservation standards." Marcus's smile tightened. "Always good to have a niche, isn't it? Some of us build the future, others ... dust off the past." Before Olivia could respond, the lights dimmed and a spotlight illuminated the podium. The master of ceremonies tapped the microphone, calling for attention. "If you'll excuse me," Olivia murmured, moving toward her assigned table near the back of the ballroom as she navigated between tables. Her phone vibrated with a text message. It was from her assistant, Priya. Bedford called. "The mysterious investor loved your preliminary designs. They want to meet tomorrow. This could be the one, boss." Olivia slipped her phone back into her clutch, her heartbeat quickening. The Bedford Projector Revolutionary Cultural Center proposed for the abandoned waterfront was exactly the kind of forward-thinking design she'd been fighting to be considered for since the divorce. She settled into her chair as the first award category was announced. Across the room, Marcus leaned forward expectantly, his new partner's hand resting on his shoulder. For a moment, their eyes met across the crowded space. Olivia didn't look away. Tomorrow might change everything, and Marcus wouldn't see it coming. The patrons' offer, the Bedford Waterfront District, loomed like an industrial ghost town against the morning sky, its abandoned warehouses and forgotten docks awaiting resurrection. Olivia arrived 30 minutes early, parking her modest sedan beside the only other vehicle in the lot, a sleek black Tesla with tinted windows. She double-checked the address Priya had sent. Warehouse 17. The largest structure on the waterfront, its brick facade weathered by decades of salt, air, and neglect. The massive iron door creaked open at her touch. Inside, shafts of sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating floating dust particles and creating natural spotlights on the concrete floor. At the center stood a detailed scale model of her proposed design, the one she'd submitted to Bedford Development months ago, convinced it would be rejected for being too ambitious. You envision glass walkways suspended over water gardens? The deep voice echoed through the cavernous space, central atrium that changes with the seasons, walls that breathe with the tide. A man stepped from the shadows, his movements deliberate and measured. Tall, with olive skin and striking gray eyes, he wore simple, dark clothes that somehow conveyed wealth in their understated quality. His hair, prematurely silver at the temples, contrasted with a face younger than she'd expected. Damien Novak, he introduced himself, extending a hand. I've been following your work for some time, Ms. Reed. His grip was firm, his gaze direct. Olivia recognized the name immediately, founder of Novak Technologies, the reclusive genius, who had revolutionized sustainable energy storage before disappearing from public view 3 years ago. Your proposal speaks to what this space could become, he continued, circling the model. Not just a building, but a living entity that responds to its environment. It's exactly what I've been searching for. Olivia approached the model, noting the additional elements. Someone had incorporated subtle enhancements that elevated her original concept. You've made changes. Suggestions only, Damien replied. The vision is entirely yours. I simply added technical aspects where Novak's proprietary materials could be integrated if you approve, of course. He guided her through the warehouse, which had been partially transformed into a makeshift presentation space. Digital renderings of her design projected onto bare walls, bringing the concept to three-dimensional life. Each rendering included detailed annotations, technical specifications, and sustainability metrics that exceeded her most optimistic calculations. You've done extensive research, she observed, studying the projections. I believe in thorough preparation. Something in his tone suggested he wasn't just talking about the project, especially when I'm about to propose a partnership that could change both our trajectories. The word partnership caught her attention. I was told this was a commission. It began that way, Damien acknowledged. But what you've designed here, he gestured to the model, deserves more than just execution. It deserves ownership. He outlined his proposal. Full creative control for Olivia, unlimited budget, proprietary materials from Novak Technologies, and 50% ownership of the completed center. In return, she would establish her new architectural firm within the complex, showcasing sustainable urban renewal through her future projects. Why me? She asked finally. There are dozens of architects with bigger names and established firms. Damien's expression remained composed, but something flickered in his eyes. 3 years ago, I attended a lecture you gave on architectural symbiosis, how buildings should exist in harmony with their environments, not in dominion over them. You spoke about listening to spaces before imposing vision upon them. He paused. That philosophy changed how I approached my own work in sustainable technology. He walked to a table where architectural journals lay open to features on her previous projects, including several that had been overshadowed by Marcus's more publicity-friendly designs during their marriage. Your ex-husband builds monuments to human achievement, Damien said carefully. You create spaces that celebrate human potential. There's a profound difference. The mention of Marcus startled her. You've researched me personally. I research everything that matters, he replied simply. And I know what it's like to have others take credit for your vision. Something in his tone resonated with her own experience, the familiar sting of watching others claim recognition for ideas you'd nurtured. Before she could respond, her phone chimed with a news alert. She glanced down to see Marcus's face on the screen, standing proudly beside the Architectural Excellence Award he'd predicted would be his. Damien noticed her expression change. Bad news? It's just confirmation of something I already knew would happen, she replied, tucking the phone away. Sometimes the expected path isn't the one that leads to greatness, he said, moving toward a large architectural drawing that had been pinned to a makeshift wall. It was a preliminary sketch she'd done years ago, a concept for floating neighborhoods that Marcus had dismissed as impractical fantasy. Where did you get that? She asked, approaching the forgotten drawing. University archives, it won the futurist. Design competition 12 years ago, he studied the sketch. Before you began designing what others expected of you, the accusation, gentle as it was, struck her core. Had she compromised her vision to accommodate Marcus's more conventional approach? Had she dimmed her own light to prevent outshining him? The Bedford Project could be your declaration of independence, Damien said, his voice quiet but intense. Not just from your past, but from architecture's conventional limitations. Olivia stood before her old sketch, seeing in it the seeds of the designer she'd once dreamed of becoming. The Bedford Project could either be another stepping stone in her career, or it could be transformation itself. I'll need my own team, she said finally. People I choose, not ones assigned to me. A smile touched Damien's lips. I assumed as much. There's office space prepared whenever you're ready to begin. As they walked back toward the entrance, Olivia paused by the scale model. This will take at least 2 years to complete. Maybe longer with the innovations you're suggesting. Some visions require patience, Damien replied. The question is whether you're willing to commit to something that might define the rest of your career. Sunlight illuminated the model, casting miniature shadows across its landscape of possibility. Olivia thought of Marcus's dismissive introduction. At the gala of years spent restoring other architects' visions while her own gathered dust. When can I start? Whispers and shadows, the autumn rain drummed against the windows of Olivia's new studio. A renovated loft overlooking the Bedford waterfront district where construction had already begun. 6 months into the project, the skeletal framework of her vision was taking shape, innovative support structures rising from the old industrial landscape like a phoenix emerging from ashes. These material samples arrived from Novak's lab this morning, Priya announced, wheeling in a cart laden with what looked like ordinary building materials. They're calling it responsive concrete. Apparently it adjusts porosity based on humidity levels. Olivia set aside her drafting pencil and examined the samples. Her team had expanded to 15 now architects, engineers, and designers she'd handpicked, many of whom had been overlooked by larger firms. Now the Bedford Project had become their collective obsession, a chance to redefine what urban architecture could achieve. Have you seen this? Mal, her head engineer, placed his tablet in front of her. On the screen was an article from Architectural Digest titled Whitley's Waterfront Wonder. Husband overshadows Reed's restoration career. Olivia skimmed the piece, her stomach tightening. The article detailed Marcus's newest commission, luxury development less than a mile from the Bedford Project. It painted her work as quaint restoration efforts in contrast to his bold, market-defining vision. Gets worse, Jamal swiped to another article. He scheduled the groundbreaking ceremony the same day as our foundation pour. Of course. He is, Olivia murmured. Since signing with Damien, she'd maintained complete media silence about the project at his request. The secrecy had allowed her to work without scrutiny, but it also meant the architecture world remained. Unaware of her career's dramatic pivot, her phone buzzed with a text from Damien. Dinner tonight? Important updates to discuss. Over the past months, their professional relationship had evolved into something more complex. Their regular meetings, initially focused exclusively on the project, had gradually become conversations that stretched late into the evening, touching on everything from childhood influences to philosophical perspectives on creativity. Damien remained intensely private about his personal life, yet revealed himself through his passionate beliefs about sustainable design and ethical innovation. That evening, they met at Rialto, a small restaurant tucked away in the historic district. Damien had reserved a quiet corner table away from the windows and other diners. You've seen the articles, he said when she arrived. Not a question, but a statement. Marcus has always had excellent timing, she replied, accepting the glass of wine Damien poured for her. He's discovered you're involved with Bedford, Damien said, though he doesn't know the extent. One of his associates was seen photographing the construction site yesterday. Olivia wasn't surprised. The architecture community is small. It was only a matter of time. It's partly what I wanted to discuss. Damien's expression grew serious. Someone approached one of your junior designers yesterday, offered them considerable money for information about our proprietary materials. Which designer? Nathan Walsh. He declined and reported it immediately. Olivia nodded. Nathan was fresh. Out of architecture school, talented but still proving himself. His loyalty was a good sign. Industrial espionage isn't Marcus's style, she said. He's arrogant, not underhanded, perhaps Damien replied. But his new development is backed by Hightower Construction. They've been trying to acquire my sustainable technology patents for years. The waiter arrived with their food momentarily. Pausing the conversation, when they were alone again, Damien continued, "There's something else you should know." He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "I've been invited to speak at the Architectural Innovation Summit next month. I'd like you to present with Miraviel, the Bedford project, to the world." Olivia set down her fork. The summit was the most prestigious gathering in the industry, where groundbreaking concepts were unveiled before an audience of the world's leading architects, developers, and critics. Why now? "I thought we agreed to maintain secrecy until completion." "Circumstances have changed," Damien replied. "Marcus's project is garnering significant investor attention. If we reveal Bedford now, we control the narrative rather than responding to his." There was logic in his argument, but Olivia sensed he wasn't sharing everything. "What aren't you telling me?" Damien's expression softened slightly. "You deserve recognition for what you've created, Olivia. I've watched you pour your soul into this project, yet publicly you're still defined by your past as Marcus Whitley's ex-wife or as a restoration specialist. The summit would reintroduce you as the visionary you truly are." His words touched something vulnerable within her. Despite her confidence in the Bedford project, part of her still feared stepping fully into the spotlight, still remembered Marcus's dismissive assessment of her ambitions. "There would be significant attention," she said carefully. "Critics waiting." "For us to fail," Damien repeated, a smile touching his lips. "Yes, we would face scrutiny together. That's rather the point." Later that night, as Olivia returned to her apartment, she found a package leaning against her door, a flat, rectangular parcel wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a framed article from an architectural journal published 15 years earlier. It featured a young Olivia Reed receiving an award for innovative student design. Her face alight with uncomplicated joy and ambition. A note accompanied it. Written in Damien's distinctive hand, "This is who will take the stage at the summit." The architect who existed before doubt crept in. The gesture moved her deeply, but as she placed the frame on her desk, her phone chimed with an email notification. The sender, Marcus Whitley. Subject line, "A friendly warning." She opened it. With trepidation, the message was brief. "Liv, heard you've partnered with Novak? Did you research his history with Thorn Industries? Ask him about Singapore? Some collapsed buildings can't be restored." Olivia stared at the screen, the warm certainty she'd felt moments ago cooling into unease. She knew of Thorn Industries, a global construction conglomerate with a questionable ethical reputation, but had never heard of any connection to Damien in Singapore. What had happened there? The phone faced down on her desk, trying to dismiss the message as another of Marcus's manipulations. Yet doubt, once introduced, proved difficult to banish. Tomorrow she would discreetly research Damien's past, not because she distrusted him, she told herself, but because Marcus's warning deserved at least cursory investigation. Outside her window, the partially constructed framework of the Bedford project was visible in the distance, illuminated against the night sky by security lights. Its unfinished state suddenly seemed metaphorical vision taking shape, but still vulnerable. Its final form not yet assured. The exhibition, the Architectural Innovation Summit, transformed Boston's convention center into a cathedral of creativity. Glass models gleamed under precision lighting, holographic displays projected future cityscapes, and the air hummed with the excited conversations of the design world's elite. The center of it all stood the Bedford Project exhibition, a dramatically larger version of the scale model Olivia had first seen in the warehouse, now enhanced with interactive elements. That allowed visitors to experience her vision from within. 15 minutes until your presentation, Priya reminded her, adjusting the collar of Olivia's tailored charcoal suit. The main hall is already at capacity. Olivia nodded, trying to center herself. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of preparation and unexpected revelations. Her research into Damien's past had yielded troubling fragments: a collapsed residential tower in Singapore 7 years ago, Novak Technologies components implicated, lawsuits settled out of court. Yet the details remained frustratingly opaque, buried beneath layers of confidentiality agreements and corporate maneuvering. When confronted, Damien hadn't denied his company's involvement, but insisted the full story was more complex than public records suggested. After the presentation, he'd promised, "I'll explain everything then." Now, as she surveyed the exhibition hall, she caught sight of Marcus across the room, holding court among a circle of admirers. Their eyes met briefly, his expression a mixture of challenge and something more difficult to define. Stood a man she recognized from her research. Victor Thorne, CEO of Thorne Industries. "Ms. Reed?" Voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a press badge. Helen Winters, Architectural Review. "Might I have a moment before your presentation?" Before Olivia could respond, Jamal appeared at her side. "I'm sorry, Ms. Winters, but Ms. Reed is needed for technical preparations. Perhaps afterward." He guided Olivia toward the backstage area, lowering his voice once they were out of earshot. "We have a situation. Someone tampered with the presentation." "Files? What?" Olivia stopped walking. "How badly?" "We caught it during final checks. The material stress tests were altered, showing failure points where there aren't any." Jamal's expression was grim. "If we hadn't caught it, you would have presented falsified data to the entire industry. How did this happen? Who had access?" "That's the thing. The changes came from Nathan Walsh's account, but he swears he didn't do it. Says his credentials must have been stolen." Nathan, the junior designer who'd been approached for information months ago. Olivia's mind raced. Where is he now? Security's holding him. "Damien wanted to call the police, but I suggested we talk to you first." Olivia checked her watch. 12 minutes until she was due on stage. "Show me exactly what was changed." In the technical booth, Priya had already restored the correct files from backups. The modifications were subtle, she explained, toggling between versions. They specifically targeted the innovative load-bearing structures, making them appear dangerously unstable under normal conditions. "Someone who knows engineering," Olivia murmured. "One who wanted us to publicly discredit ourselves." Her phone buzzed with a text from Damien. "Where are you?" "Audience is seated." "I need to see Nathan," she decided. Security had placed him in a small conference room. The young designer looked up as she entered, his face pale with stress. "Ms. Reed, I swear I didn't. I believe you," she interrupted. "But I need to know everything." "When were you approached about selling information? Who was it? What exactly did they want?" Nathan swallowed hard. "It was after the team dinner last month. A man approached me in the parking lot, said he represented investors interested in sustainable architecture. Offered $50,000 for details about the proprietary materials." He hesitated. "When I refused, he mentioned my student loans. Said he could make them disappear." "Did you recognize him? Was he from Thorne Industries?" "I never caught his name, but..." Nathan reached for his phone, scrolling through photos. "I saw him again yesterday, here at the summit." "Oh." "I took a picture, because it seemed suspicious." He handed her the phone. The image showed a man in conversation with Marcus Whitley, not Victor Thorne, as she'd expected, but someone she recognized from Marcus's firm. "It gets worse," Nathan continued. "He specifically asked about the Singapore project, wanted to know if Mr. Novak had mentioned it to you." "Singapore again, the collapsed building. Settlements. Thank you, Nathan. Stay here until I return." Olivia left the room, mind racing. 8 minutes until her presentation. She found Damien backstage, reviewing notes. "Someone sabotaged our presentation files," she said without preamble. "And I need to know what happened in Singapore before I go on that stage." Damien set down his tablet, his expression grave. "Not here." He guided her to a private room adjacent to the stage. Once the door closed, he spoke quickly. Novak Technologies provided specialized materials for a Thorn Industries residential tower in Singapore. 3 months after completion, the East Wing collapsed, killing 12 people. His voice remained steady, but pain flashed across his features. Initial reports blamed my materials, but our internal investigation found evidence that Thorn had substituted cheaper components during construction, while maintaining the certification that our materials had been used throughout. You could have proven this? I tried. But Thorn's political connections in Singapore were extensive. Key evidence disappeared. Witnesses changed testimonies. Damien's hands clenched. They offered a settlement that included complete confidentiality and suggested that if I refused, additional structural issues might be discovered in other buildings using my technology. You paid to protect your company's reputation, Olivia said, understanding dawning. I paid to prevent more deaths, he corrected. If public confidence in my materials collapsed, dozens of completed buildings might have been unnecessarily demolished. The settlement bought time to quietly reinforce every structure that contained our components. The revelation cast his reclusive years in a new light. Not withdrawal from scandal, but deliberate work behind the scenes. Marcus knows, she realized, or at least suspects. Thorn Industries is financing his waterfront development, Damien confirmed. When our project began gaining attention, old interests aligned. A stagehand knocked urgently. 2 minutes, Ms. Reed. Olivia faced Damien. Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? Would you have partnered with me if I had? His question hung between them, honest and vulnerable. The Singapore incident is the darkest chapter of my professional life. I wanted you to judge my vision, not my history. Before she could respond, the stagehand returned. They're introducing you now, Ms. Reed. Damien touched her arm gently. Whatever you decide about me, the Bedford project deserves its moment. It's yours as much as mine. Olivia stepped toward the stage, mind still processing everything she'd learned. The master of ceremonies was already announcing her name, applause rising from the packed auditorium. Through the stage curtains, she glimpsed Marcus in the front row, Victor Thorn beside him. As she walked onto the stage, Olivia made a split-second decision. She would present the Bedford project exactly as planned, but with one significant addition. The truth about Singapore would be acknowledged, not hidden. The narrative would be reclaimed. The spotlight found her as she reached the podium. The audience fell silent, waiting for her to unveil the future she had designed. Behind her, the massive screen illuminated with the opening image of her presentation. Bird's-eye view of the Bedford waterfront district transformed by her vision. Olivia leaned toward the microphone, her voice steady. Today I want to talk about architectural integrity, not just in our buildings, but in how we create them. Beyond the blueprint, the standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. As the applause finally began to fade, Olivia stepped away from the podium, her heart pounding with adrenaline and vindication. Her presentation had evolved from a simple architectural unveiling into something far more powerful, a declaration of principles that had resonated throughout the hall. She had presented the Bedford project in all its innovative glory, detailing the revolutionary materials and sustainable systems that would make it a landmark of regenerative architecture. But she had also addressed the Singapore incident directly, explaining how Damien Novak had spent years quietly reinforcing buildings and perfecting safer materials, while industries like Thorn continued prioritizing profit over safety. Architecture isn't just about creating spaces, she had concluded. It's about creating trust. The Bedford project isn't just rebuilding a waterfront, it's rebuilding faith in ethical innovation. As she exited the stage, the crowd surged forward. Journalists called out questions, colleagues extended congratulations, industry leaders pressed business cards into her hands. Through the sea of faces, she caught sight of Marcus making a hasty exit, Victor Thorn's expression thunderous. Beside him, Apriya whispered, appearing at her side, was absolutely magnificent. It was truthful, Olivia replied simply. Has anyone seen Damien? Mr. Novak left immediately after your speech, a security guard informed her. Asked me to give you this. He handed her a small envelope containing a handwritten note. Meet me at Bedford when you're ready. It was nearly midnight when Olivia finally arrived at the construction site. Security recognized her car and waved her through the gates. The partially completed structure loomed against the night sky, illuminated by strategically placed lights that highlighted its emerging form. Damien stood on the temporary observation platform that overlooked the entire project, his silhouette unmistakable against the backdrop of the city skyline. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said as she joined him. I wasn't sure either, she admitted. They stood in silence for a moment, the gentle sound of water lapping against the shoreline below them. What you did today, ... double quotes Damien began. For both of us, she finished. For both of us. You risked everything, your reputation, the project, our partnership. Actually, I protected them. Olivia turned to face him fully. Secrets have a way of emerging at the worst possible moments. Marcus and Thorne were counting on that, waiting for the most damaging opportunity. The moonlight illuminated Damien's face, revealing an expression of profound respect and something deeper that made Olivia's pulse quicken. The settlement agreement had a non-disclosure clause, he said quietly. What you revealed today, technically, violated those terms, I know. She had considered this carefully before her speech. What will Thorne do? They've already called my attorneys, Damien said, a smile unexpectedly spreading across his features. Threatened all manner of legal action. But here's what they don't know. The confidentiality agreement expired last month. I couldn't discuss Singapore publicly until today, which is why I postponed telling you the full story. Relief washed over Olivia, so we're in the clear. Better than that? Damien produced a tablet, displaying a news alert published just an hour earlier. Thorne Industries stocks plummet following revelations at Architecture Summit. 3 other architects have already come forward with similar stories about substituted materials, he continued. The Singapore incident was apparently not isolated. There's talk of a formal investigation. Olivia leaned against the railing, processing the implications. And Marcus, distancing himself rapidly from Thorne, according to industry channels. His waterfront development is on hold, pending review of materials sourcing. The irony wasn't lost on her. Marcus, who had so often dismissed her concerns about ethical construction practices during their marriage, was now facing the consequences of those very compromises. I received 17 commissions during your speech, Damien said, changing the subject. All requesting sustainable designs with transparent materials sourcing. Your vision is becoming industry standard overnight. Our vision, she corrected. I couldn't have created this without your belief in what was possible. Damien moved closer, his hand covering hers on the railing. I have something to show you. He led her down the platform steps and into the partially constructed central atrium. Heart of her design. Workers had installed temporary lighting that illuminated the space from below, casting ethereal patterns across the skeletal framework of what would eventually be a glass ceiling. In the center of the space stood something unexpected, a perfect, miniature version of her childhood home. The first structure she had ever sketched as a 10-year-old girl dreaming of becoming an architect. How did you? She began, moving toward the model in wonder. Your mother still had your original drawings, Damien explained. I visited her last month while you were finalizing the presentation. She showed me your earliest designs, this house with its wraparound porch and reading nook in the attic. Olivia circled the miniature, marveling at the precise details of the tiny swing on the porch that her father had built for her. I had it created as a permanent installation, Damien continued. It will remain here, at the heart of Bedford, as a reminder of where vision begins with the simple desire to create spaces that shelter dreams. The gesture moved her deeply. It's recognizing as it did the full circle of her journey from a child drawing houses to an architect reshaping urban landscapes. There's something else, he said, his voice taking on an unexpected note of uncertainty. A proposal of sorts. For one startled moment, Olivia thought he might be speaking of a personal proposal, but he continued professionally, though his hand remained close to hers. I want to establish the Reed Foundation for Ethical Architecture, he said, an organization that will fund innovative designs from overlooked architects, with an emphasis on sustainability and community integration. With your permission, I'd like to endow it with $50 million to start. Olivia stared at him, momentarily speechless. Damien, that's extraordinary. You changed the conversation today, he said simply. It's not just about materials or methods, but about the fundamental purpose of architecture. That deserves to be amplified. The magnitude of the opportunity stretched before her a chance to elevate other voices that had been dismissed, to create pathways for visions that might otherwise remain unrealized. I accept, she said finally. On one condition, name it. We establish it together. She moved closer, eliminating the careful distance they had maintained for months. As equal partners in every sense, understanding dawned in his eyes. Olivia, ... The past doesn't define us, she said, echoing the theme of her presentation. Neither the glory nor the failures. It's what we build next that matters. As if in response to her words, the temporary lights shifted, casting new patterns across. The space, the future Bedford Center, coming to life around them in shadow and promise. Morning found them still at the site. Watching the sunrise illuminate the emerging structure, Olivia's phone buzzed repeatedly with interview requests. Commission offers and congratulatory messages from colleagues who had witnessed her triumph. One text, however, stood out from the others from Marcus. Impressive presentation. I underestimated you, I always did. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Marcus, it was unprecedented acknowledgement. Olivia showed it to Damien, who read it with raised eyebrows. Will you respond? He asked. Olivia considered the question, thinking of all the years she'd spent, seeking Marcus's approval, measuring her success against his estimation of her talent. She set the phone aside without replying. Some conversations, she said, turning toward. The rising sun that gilded the Bedford project in morning light aren't worth continuing? Damien smiled, understanding perfectly. Together, they faced the waterfront, where construction crews were already arriving to begin the day's work, adding substance to vision. Transforming blueprint into reality, building a future neither could have created alone in the distance. A group of architecture students had gathered at the perimeter fence, sketchbooks in hand, drawing inspiration from what they could see of the innovative structure. Olivia recognized in their eager faces the same passion that had driven her since childhood, the desire to create spaces that elevated human experience. Shall we invite them in? Damien suggested, noticing her gaze. Olivia nodded. The best designs are never finished, she said. They grow beyond their creators, inspiring what comes next. As they walked toward the gates to welcome the students, Olivia felt a profound sense of completion, not of the Bedford project, which would continue evolving for months to come, but of her own transformation from someone seeking validation to an architect confidently defining her own vision. The blueprint of her life had been redrawn, its foundations strengthened. Its horizons expanded beyond anything she could have imagined that night at the Architectural Excellence Awards. Whatever Marcus had intended with his mockery had ultimately led her here to a partnership based on mutual respect, to a project that would redefine sustainable architecture, and to a future limited only by the scope of her imagination. And that, Olivia realized as she opened the gates to the next generation of architects, was the most beautiful design of all.